FY22 Byrne Discretionary Community Project Funding / Byrne Discretionary Grants Program, or Byrne Discretionary for short. The purpose of today's webinar is to review the Byrne Discretionary Program solicitation requirements and provide you with the information you need to successfully submit your Byrne Discretionary Program application in JustGrants. We want to ensure that you're off to a great start and have the tools needed to submit your application. We are recording today's session, and we will make the recording available to everyone following the webinar. Okay, just a few housekeeping. Before we start, I will review the features in WebEx that will be important for us today. The meeting today includes a chat function for communicating directly with the OJP panelists. We ask that you use the chat feature if you experience technical difficulties accessing the session and need assistance. We offer a multimedia viewer as well as a question and answer feature. The Q&A feature is designed for sessions like ours in which we anticipate there will be lots of questions. Please use the Q&A feature for questions about the session content because WebEx groups the answers with the questions so you don't have to search through a lengthy chat log to find your answers. So the chat should be for any issues with seeing or hearing the WebEx. The question and answer is to be used for questions regarding the content, regarding the program, the solicitation, how to apply, the JustGrants. We also disabled the video for all participants, so we have more system resources available to the content. We don't want all the videos to come through and cause a lag in what we're doing today. Should you need or want live captioning, you can locate the multimedia viewer by selecting the icon with the 3 dots at the bottom right corner of your screen. Open the multimedia viewer to access the captioning. We've also muted all attendees to reduce background noise. If you can't hear, please click the arrow to the right of the unmute button at the bottom of your screen to select an audio option. If you're still not able to make the audio work, I recommend that you call in by the phone using the number in the meeting invite details. Okay. So any questions? So we've activated the Q&A, the question and answer feature, for questions during today's webinar. We have several OJP and JustGrants team members monitoring the Q&A, and they will provide answers in writing as much as possible. We will stop to answer questions verbally during the session, and we will select questions that may require a greater level of detail than what we can achieve in the chat or the Q&A section, and questions that may have been asked more than once. As we receive and answer questions in the Q&A feature, you can use the scroll bar to the right to review them. We will follow up with answers after the webinar to any questions that do not receive an answer during the session. We're going to try to answer everything. There will be some questions that we probably won't get to or may require some more thought for us, but we will make sure that everyone gets a response to any question that's posed in the Q&A section. Okay. As for the agenda for today's application webinar, we will spend the first 30 minutes for that program overview section, during which we'll review aspects of the solicitation and share important tips to help you complete your application. We will use the remainder of our time to review the JustGrants onboarding steps for first-time and returning grantees, as well as review some entity roles and demonstrations about entity onboarding. Next, we'll go through steps of the application submission, which includes submitting preliminary information in grants.gov, as well as locating and submitting an application in JustGrants. At the end of today's webinar, we will review where to go for help as you navigate through our JustGrants system. We are eager to address any questions you might have related to the solicitation, to JustGrants, or the roles and process to submit an application. So while we review the role that grants.gov plays in the application submission process, we are not able to provide technical assistance related to the functioning of grants.gov itself, since that's a platform that's managed by a separate federal agency. Nevertheless, we hope that you use the Q&A function to submit your questions, and we will do our best to answer as many of those as we can today, knowing that we will follow up with you for those that we don't answer during the session. Okay, so so for the purpose of review, we have a lot of information to cover. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Bureau of Justice Assistance Division Chief Eric Dietrich, to present the Program Office Overview section. Eric?
Thanks, John, and welcome everybody. OJP is issuing awards through 4 separate but identical solicitations for the projects funded under the Byrne Discretionary Program, depending on which OJP office will administer the grants, which in addition to BGA includes the Office for Victims of Crime, OVC, Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, OJJDP, and the National Institute of Justice, or NIJ. Eligible recipients have been contacted and sent the invitation to apply by the program office that will be administering your award. This slide has information for all 4. This webinar covers the requirements for the entire program since the solicitations and requirements are identical. This slide has language taken directly from the solicitation, but I know there's been some confusion, so I'll try to clarify. This invited to apply solicitation is only open to recipients who received a specific appropriation for a community criminal justice project under the subject heading in the 2022 Consolidated Appropriations Act. That is an earmark. We don't use the word earmark in the invitation or solicitation because it's not the official term used in the bill, but that's what this program is. It is funding the earmarked projects under the Byrne Discretionary heading in the public law. I know some of you may have received information indicating that your project received an appropriation or an earmark, and you assumed the funds would be issued directly. Although funds were appropriated, because Congress did so under a grant program, you must submit a grant application and OJP must issue a grant award. This is historically how DOJ earmarks were issued back when they were appropriated regularly each fiscal year. I know the name Byrne and the term discretionary may have contributed to the confusion. Many of you may be familiar with the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant, or JAG program, which is a formula grant program that BGA administers every year. The Byrne Discretionary Program is not JAG. Congress used the name Byrne to indicate the OJP projects to receive funding with a criminal justice nexus. Second, many people associate the term discretionary with only competitive grant programs, and you may have been worried there would be some competition for the project. But discretionary grant programs can also be non-competitive. The Byrne Discretionary Grant Program is non-competitive. It's by invitation only. Only the 246 projects appropriated under this heading in the amounts listed for the listed recipient can receive a grant award under this program. I mentioned the public law, which is the 2,000+ page document that I was linked to in the previous slide. The list of 246 funded projects under this program is in the reference to Joint Explanatory Statement, or JES. Get used to that 3-letter acronym because we will use it a lot. There was a link to the JES also in the previous slide, and here is a snip of page 178 where the list of Byrne discretionary projects begins. We previously emailed you a PDF that OJP created listing the projects by state, which may be easier for you to reference, but the JES is the official list. This slide has the eligibility information from the solicitation, which I've already largely covered. Eligible applicants are limited to those recipients listed in the JES. OJP will use the SAM registration legal name or doing business as name associated with the application's unique entity identifier, UEI, to confirm eligibility. As noted on this slide, all recipient or subrecipients, including for-profits, must forego any profit or management fee. As we get into some of the more specific information related to the application, we reiterate here that only eligible applicants will be able to receive funds for those specific projects. Some information that will help confirm this will be entered in the SF424 form that you will complete in grants.gov and the applicant information in JustGrants. We will go into detail on the application steps later, but we ask specifically that you enter the project title as it appears in the JES in the SF424 form and in the JustGrants application information. On this slide, we note that some recipients have been appropriated funding for more than one Byrne project. These recipients must submit separate grant applications for each project. OJP will issue a single award for each project, so 246 total grants. We will not combine funding for projects into a single award for those of you with multiple earmarks. Next slide, please.
Eric, are you
Okay, there we
seeing
are.
the specific period of the forward slide?
Yep. Yes, I am now. Thank you.
Okay.
Probably the most common question I have received is whether you would need to expend Byrne discretionary funds by the end of the federal fiscal year of 2022, which is September 30th this year. The answer is no. You do not need to expend funds by September 30th, 2022. OJP will issue awards with a project start date of March 15th, 2022, which is the date the public law was enacted. You can request a different start date as long as it is the first day of the month and no later than October 1, 2022. OJP will issue awards with an 18-month project period, but you can request up to a 36-month project period in your application, and then OJP would issue the award with the requested project period. You should make clear what your requested project period is within these limitations when you enter your project period dates in the SF424 and application information in JustGrants. I would recommend that you state it clearly in your abstract and project narrative also. If you do request a different start date than March 15th, 2022, you should know that OJP typically does not approve pre-award costs, and so you would not be able to be reimbursed for any project costs before the start date. As to the start date of March 15th, 2022, we have included the language from the solicitation that notes that costs incurred on or after that date, but before OJP issues an award or clears your budget, may be reimbursable. But you obligate your own funds with the intent of later reimbursing. You do so at your own risk, and there will be an award condition that specifies this. Only costs authorized by OJP would be approved for reimbursement. The solicitation lists certain costs or activities that would be unallowable under this program. I won't read these because the language is directly from the solicitation, and I think they are pretty straightforward. Regarding the second bullet, OJP prohibits the use of grant funds for UAVs, that's drones, and related costs under all of its programs. But given the unique nature of this program, we revised that language slightly to potentially cover a situation in which the public law might specifically authorize such a cost. There is only one project that may fall into this category for an exception, and NIJ is administering that award. If you take a look at the titles of the 246 projects being funded under Byrne heading in the JES, you'll note there's a wide variety of criminal justice projects that were appropriated funds. So it'd be impossible other than a very general way to list allowable use of funds. It will vary widely based on the project. I will point out that since funding was appropriated as a grant, the grants funding these projects will be subject to the same administrative requirements as other grants to include allowable costs. This slide has links to the uniform requirements, which are the federal-wide requirements for grants, and the DOJ Grants Financial Guide, which has the department's requirements. OJP will need to approve or clear your budget before costs will be authorized. I'll discuss this more later. In this second bullet, we list some of the general cost categories taken from the budget categories you will use when you complete the application, which may be allowable given your project. But again, the cost will depend on your specific project. Lastly, we note on this slide that indirect costs are allowable if your agency has an approved current negotiated rate with its cognizant federal agency, or if your agency is eligible and elects to use the de minimis rate, which is 10% of modified total direct costs. The financial guide has more information on this, but essentially if you don't have a current indirect rate with a federal agency, you can elect to use the de minimis rate. No match or cost share is required. Our standard guidance for grants that don't require a match is to tell applicants that if they elect to include non-federal costs or match in their budgets voluntarily, it will be required and subject to audit when OJP approves the budget. But my guidance is simply not to include match in your budget. Apply for only the specific amount of your appropriation. You can include in your narrative a discussion of local funds put toward the same project if you wish, but this is not required. We note here there is no cap on administrative costs other than what would be considered reasonable, and which I only mention because under their previously mentioned Byrne JAG formula program, there is a specific cap along with other specific cost rules. But again, these grants are not subject to the JAG rules. It is an entirely different program. Lastly, there are certain costs that require prior approval by the federal agency. If you include a cost that requires prior approval in your budget and OJP approves the budget, this does not necessarily indicate approval of that cost because separate written approval may be required. For example, if you are proposing to use funds to enter into a non-competitive or sole source contract over the simplified acquisition threshold of $250,000, this would require separate sole source approval by OJP. The DOJ Grants Financial Guide has a list of costs that require prior approval. The JustGrants team is going to cover the mechanics of how to submit your application, but in this slide and in the next, we're providing tips as to the content of your application to ensure that awards can be processed efficiently and as quickly as possible. The first 3 bullets are tips for any grant application, but they are so important I wanted to stress them to you. You must be registered in SAM and receive a Unique Entity Identifier, UEI, to be eligible to receive a grant, and you must be registered in SAM in order to be registered in grants.gov, which is step 1 in the application process. So if you do not have, if your entity currently does not have an active SAM registration, or it doesn't coincide with the recipient listed in the JES, that is your first order of priority. I also can't stress enough to not wait until the last day to submit in grants.gov or JustGrants. Technical issues, though rare, do come up, and mistakes are more common when rushing. It is even more important given that both systems will be taken down for a few days in May for maintenance, which we only found out about since publishing the solicitation. Grants.gov will be available starting midnight May 21st through Monday, May 23rd at 6 a.m., and that's the deadline to submit. JustGrants, unfortunately, will be taken down for a longer period to include some business days, May 13th through May 18th. During this time, you won't be able to submit applications. So again, please prioritize submitting in advance of both deadlines, if at all possible. Also on the slide, we have some tips for a quality proposal narrative. Now, this is a non-competitive program. You won't get booted if you use the wrong font or go over pages. You'll get an award, but it's important to have a quality narrative with all of the elements addressed. For one, OJP will review it against the budget and requested costs to make sure that the costs and activities clearly contribute to the project. Second, you can assume that Congress will be very interested in how the project is progressing, and in evaluating your performance, it will be important to have that complete narrative detailing your project. I don't have time to cover the other application attachments that are listed in the solicitation which may be required, which these are explained in detail in Resource Guide. But please ask your program office questions if you have any question at all about these attachments or the application forms. Again, make sure to follow the guidelines in the Application Resource Guide for all of the application attachments. I mentioned earlier that OJP will need to approve or clear your budget. Every effort will be made to do that before we issue an award. However, if there are questions or issues with the budget submitted with your application, and then OJP may need to apply an award condition that withholds funds until we get the information or the changes that we need to clear the budget post-award. We know many of you have been waiting for over a year of this funding. Since it is a common goal of both the OJP and earmark recipients to ensure access to grant funds as soon as possible, we are providing these tips to help you develop a budget that can be cleared, hopefully during the award processing. The JustGrants application has a budget web-based form that you will complete in the system instead of a budget attachment. I highly recommend you pay careful attention to the training on how to use this budget form, both in this webinar and in the other training resources on our website. The first tip on the budget may seem like a simple one, but it is very important. You should request as the federal amount, the amount that is appropriated for your project exactly, not $1 more or less. This should be the total in the budget form exactly. OJP will be issuing your award in the amount listed in the JES regardless. But even if you submit a detailed, well-justified budget with your application that is good in every way but is $5 different than your appropriation, OJP will not be able to clear the budget, and this will need to be resolved post-award. The other tip to highlight is to provide detailed computations and narrative for every cost item. We need to know that the costs support the project and are reasonable in amount. We understand that some of the costs may need to be estimates at this point, and you will be able to make adjustments post-award. But for purposes of approving the initial budget, all the costs need to be supported and explained. And this slide will cover some post-award considerations. First, and probably primarily, we know this is a popular question, is when you were going to get the grant award. OJP will prioritize our processing of awards after the solicitation closes, but it does take time to review applications and process awards. Our goal is to make all awards by September 30th, 2022, but we will be doing so on a rolling basis as soon as possible, and we hope to be well in advance of that for these Byrne discretionary grants. This slide has a few important points about post-award management of your grants, which you may like to know at this point. Access to funds after the award is made will be dictated by your acceptance of the award in JustGrants, your enrollment in the U.S. Treasury ASAP system, if you are not already, and any withholding award conditions that need to be addressed. Many of you have asked about how payments will be made. Advance of funds must be limited to 10 days of your project's cash needs, and so most of our recipients only draw down on a reimbursement basis, which does not have time frame restrictions. Like any grant, you will be required to submit performance reports, in this case semi-annually, and quarterly financial reports. These will be submitted in JustGrants. Changes can be requested post-award if needed, with the exception of any change to the project purpose or the project title modified in public. But if you need to modify the budget to better meet the needs of the approved project or change the scope without altering the project purpose, you can request to do so. You would also be eligible to request a one-time up to 12-month project period extension if you need additional time to complete the project. There is much more to say about post-award processes, and we will be holding a separate webinar after awards are made to go into more detail. And with that, I thank you for your time and interest. We will now pause here to answer questions that came through the chat before we turn it over to Lisa to cover the application mechanics training.
Hi, Eric. This is Jack. We had a number of questions at the beginning. I think where people kind of logged in a little late. They were asking if the webinar was going to be recorded. And if so, they can get a link to it or a copy of it. The webinar is being recorded. We hope to have that posted, if not tomorrow, the following day, and we will send the link to everyone that's registered in this webinar, and we'll also send the link out to all the applicant POCs so they can view it. So that'll be there. And again, you know, we're answering as many questions as we can in the chat. Those that we don't get to, for whatever reason, we will get to them tomorrow and make sure that you all get responses. And so there were some folks had a question about indirect costs. I think they posted it right before you got to that section, Eric. So you know, if you have an approved indirect cost negotiated cost rate with your cognizant federal agency, you can certainly use that. That would be capped. If you don't have one, you can choose to use the de minimis. If you go to the OJP Grants Financial Guide on the ojp.gov website, and we'll have some links, I think, later in this email. There's a section in there, a whole chapter on indirect costs, and it'll explain to you what you can include in that, how do you submit for an indirect cost, or how you can go about choosing to use the de minimis. And then there was some question about the dates, again, about when grants.gov and when JustGrants might be down for maintenance. The dates are available on both websites, the grants.gov website. You can go there and look, and also at the JustGrants website, but I think I posted in there. But Eric, if you have those in front of you, if you could just repeat those dates. I think people were trying to furiously write them down.
Yeah, I see that you posted that in the chat for grants.gov would go down, it's going to go down midnight, Saturday, May 21, and it's going to reopen Monday, May 23rd at 6 a.m. May 23rd, of course, is the deadline to submit in grants.gov, but the deadline to submit is that night at 8:59 p.m. JustGrants, I don't believe the times have been posted yet. My understanding is that May 13th is Friday, so my understanding is that they are hoping that JustGrants will be operational during the day, Friday, May 13th, and then it will be then it will reopen on May 18th. So I think the 14th and the 15th are a weekend, 16th and 17th, Monday and Tuesday. So we're hoping that it's only going to be down really 2 business days and then be back up May 18th. But once those actual times are identified, OJP is going to send an email to all recipients and applicants, and certainly it'll be on their website as well.
Yeah. So when we get to the next section, of the next portion of this webinar, it's really important to kind of key in and listen what Lisa has to say, because she's going to walk through all the steps that you need to do to submit an application. The earlier you start, the better. I wouldn't wait to the end. Make sure your SAM.gov is up to date. Get into your grants.gov, and you can submit as early as you want, but certainly try to submit before the 45-day application date. So we have a few minutes. We can answer some more. Eric, repeat the project start dates that they should list in their 424, their program narrative.
Yeah, the start date, we're going to make the start dates as March 15th, 2022, which is the date that the appropriations law was passed, or it was enacted. So we are doing that for flexibility reasons to allow people that may have been notified and had begun possibly obligating to potentially be able to reimburse themselves for those costs. However, you can request a different start date if you would like a later start date. You can make that the first day of a month, but you wouldn't be able to do it any later than October 1, 2022, which would be the normal start dates for our grants. And then you would make the end date the corresponding end date. Like I said, we will make them for 18 months, but you can request up to 36 months. So, if that's all at all unclear, feel free to send me an email and I can give you the specific dates based on what you want.
Okay, so we'll just try to run through a couple more, but real quick, in terms of the system outage dates, we're going to confirm those this week, and hopefully we'll send emails out next week to let people know when those systems, so that you have a better idea of those dates. Can we apply for an indirect cost rate? You can. If you don't have one, if you don't already have a negotiated indirect cost rate, you can certainly work with us. Whoever said that, I'll put a link, but if you go to our financial guide on our website, it'll list the steps and how you would go about doing that. Next question, are resolutions from local governments required with the applications? Eric, no, I believe the answer is no.
No, right. That's not a required attachment. Feel free to include them if you would like, but they're not required.
And so next question, where can we access the JES? Is there a searchable link? We actually included a link in the original invitation to apply email. So if whoever your applicant POC is, it's there. You can also just Google it. You should be able to just take the language that we have in this presentation and Google it and bring it up. Did I cover that one, Eric?
Yeah, and there's also a link to it in the second slide of the program section. Unfortunately, the way Congress published it on their website, it's actually a Xerox PDF, so you can't really search it. It's hard to search it. So, but there is a link to it in the slides.
Okay. I know there were some questions about the project periods. I think Eric did a really good job of letting you know we plan to do an initial 18 months. You can request up to 36 months. We talked about the start date. I think it's important to let people know, and Eric, you might have hit this, but I just didn't, I just missed it. Grant recipients are entitled to request one extension up to 12 months. So that's something to think about, just so you're aware. We have about another minute or two before we need to get into the next section. Any specific guidelines for those who applied as fiscal sponsors for organizations? We submitted our request as fiscal for another nonprofit that yet to be set up at the time. We'll have to get back to you on that one. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly. So even if we propose our project for 12 months for the appropriation, we can alter the proposal to be up to 36 months. Also, the start date can be between March 15th and October 1st, 2022. Is that correct? You can, yeah. So the earliest that we can make the start date, the earliest that you can request start date is March 15th, 2022, the enactment of the budget. You can request a later one, but we ask you not to request a start date later than October 1st. we were going to make all the projects for 18 months. If you want less, if you want a 12 months, just put that in your SF, in your application, in your standard, your application for federal assistance, and we can do that. I would probably recommend that you just make it for 18 months just to cover some contingencies. You may have some delays or some, some initial project delays, or you may, spend later or earlier, but hopefully that answers your question. I think we're at 3:01. So we'll get into the into the question and answer section. We'll continue to answer your questions. And again, if we don't get to all of them, we will follow up, if not tomorrow, the following day. So I think this is a good time to transition over to Lisa.
Thank you, Jonathan and Eric. Appreciate you inviting us here today as the JustGrants team to help to walk through some of these processes in JustGrants. I am going to turn off my camera while we do this to make sure that we have enough resources to handle all of the information that we've got. So one of the things that I know, we've actually seen a couple of questions come through about onboarding. How do we get a JustGrants account? So we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about onboarding. We're going to talk about 3 different systems that you're going to need to access and use in order to apply for your funding. So we're going to start with sam.gov. I think as Eric mentioned, everyone needs to have an active sam.gov account in order to apply for any sort of funding with the federal government. Once you have an active sam.gov account, the funding appears initially in grants.gov, and you'll need to access that information. You'll need to access that opportunity and begin your application process in grants.gov. And then finally, when you submit your preliminary application information in grants.gov, then it will move to JustGrants. And if for those of you who have not had a JustGrants account before, your JustGrants account is created automatically when that application moves from grants.gov into JustGrants. So if you're new to the JustGrants system, this is a visual roadmap that helps you be aware of the steps needed to get through the grant process. Now, you'll want to first register again with sam.gov. And when you do, you'll designate an eBiz point of contact in sam.gov. Also, you're going to need to make note of your UEI, or your unique entity identifier, in sam.gov. Now, to locate the grant in grants.gov, you're going to need to open grants.gov, do a search, and select that funding opportunity that you're going to apply for. Now, during the process of beginning your application in grants.gov, you're going to be required to complete certain forms. You'll complete and submit the SF424 and SFLLL in grants.gov. Now, it's important to know that if you don't have your final budget figures, or you've not yet determined, well, I think in your case, you've determined the amount of funding, but if your budget figures are still not fully gelled, you are welcome to submit preliminary figures and update your entries in JustGrants prior to submitting the completed application to DOJ. Now, while the information you include in the SF424 and grants.gov will be sent to JustGrants, you will be able to adjust and edit that information in JustGrants. The SFLLL will be sent from grants.gov to JustGrants as a PDF file, and you will not need to complete that information again. Now, the bulk of the application is entered in JustGrants. It's here that you're going to enter a proposal narrative, as Eric discussed. You'll potentially enter a proposal abstract. You'll enter the budget detail worksheet and any goals, objectives, and timelines that apply. Now, the person that you identified as the sam.gov eBiz point of contact is automatically going to be created as a JustGrants entity administrator. And that is the person that's listed in grants.gov. The person listed in grants.gov as the application submitter will automatically become the application submitter in JustGrants. So a lot of this happens automatically for you, and that can be both good and bad. Sometimes you don't really want to be the JustGrants entity administrator just because you're the sam.gov eBiz point of contact, and if that's the case, you can reassign someone else to have that role once you log in to JustGrants. You can also reassign the application submitter role to another person in JustGrants, again, once you've logged into JustGrants. Now, regarding grants.gov, since February 21st, 2022, all non-federal grants.gov users are required to use login.gov credentials to sign into grants.gov. This change to the grants.gov sign-in process improves user security and complies with Executive Order 14028, improving the nation's cybersecurity. Now, login.gov allows users to access multiple government websites, including grants.gov, using a single username and password. It does not, by the way, work for JustGrants, but it does work for other grants, multiple government websites. Now, if you have a grants.gov account, you're going to need to link your grants.gov account with login.gov. And to do that, you can follow this three-step process. First, when you're logging in, click the login.gov button on the grants.gov login screen. You want to complete the login process on login.gov using your login.gov username, which is an email address, and a password, or you'll need to create an account if you don't already have one. You'll then be directed back to grants.gov to log in with that grants.gov username and password, and this will complete the account linking process. Grants.gov removed the username and password login option as of February 21st, 2022, so don't be surprised by this screen. You're not going to see on the top image, you're not going to see that, that portion on the left, only the login.gov option. Also, effective Monday, April 4th, 2022, entities can no longer see or use the DUNS number anywhere in SAM.gov. The new Unique Entity Identifier, or UEI, is the official government-wide identifier used for federal awards as of April 4th. Now, the UEI is a 12-character alphanumeric value, and it's used in SAM.gov. It's created by SAM.gov, used in SAM.gov and other government award and financial systems to identify a unique entity. Users are going to need the SAM UEI to search entity registrations, exclusions, and contract opportunity awards by entity identifier. SAM registration will continue to require annual renewal. There will be no change in your schedule for renewal and no change in the fact that you must renew it every year. The UEI simplifies the process of registering an organization to do business with the federal government. Entities no longer need to use a third party to obtain an identification number or get support. Now, as a reminder, JustGrants uses SAM as the primary source of agency information in applying for and managing DOJ funding. JustGrants automatically pulls entity information from SAM, thereby reducing the burden on award recipients to have to update both SAM.gov and JustGrants and grants.gov. Everything is all tied together by that UEI. It helps DOJ validate information from recipients. Now, to find your UEI in SAM.gov, you're going to need to log into your account and locate the active bubble in the Entity Management widget, which you're looking at here. You want to select it to open your current SAM.gov registration record. Once you open that record, the UEI is displayed on the left of the screen. Now, in this image, you see the DUNS number displayed above the UEI. However, the DUNS number no longer appears in SAM.gov as of April 4th, 2020. You are no longer going to be able to locate your SAM.gov account using the DUNS number. In JustGrants, once you open the Entity Profile menu option, your entity information is displayed. The DUNS is in the center top row, and the UEI is directly below it. If you registered in SAM.gov after April 4th, you will not have a DUNS number. JustGrants will continue to display the DUNS number for some time, but it will eventually remove that as well. Now, once you've applied in grants.gov and your account in JustGrants is open and ready for you to move forward, this roadmap will help you visualize each of the steps that are needed in JustGrants when you're onboarding a new user. First, the entity administrator will log into Diamond to set up each new user. Diamond is the user management section of JustGrants. The only information required to create a new user is the first name, last name, and email address. The email address will become the username, and the user will select their own password during the registration process. Now, once the new user is created, the entity administrator will assign one or more roles to that user, depending on the general work the user intends to do in JustGrants. Then we'll talk about those roles in a minute. New users will receive a registration email once the entity administrator has invited them to register. The user will need to open a link in the email and follow the steps to register in JustGrants. This includes setting up a password and multi-factor authentication. This registration is step 1. Step 2 is critical and often forgotten. Step 2 is to actually log into JustGrants. Even though a new user is registered, they're not active users in JustGrants until they've logged into the system at least once. And this is a good time to test their username and password anyway. Now, once the new user is registered and they've logged in, the entity administrator is going to be able to assign that user to specific awards and applications to move forward with award management. Now, regarding applications, here are some quick tips to ensure success when you're accessing and using JustGrants. First of all, we recommend that you use Chrome or Microsoft Edge to access JustGrants. Internet Explorer does not provide an optimal experience in JustGrants. Each time you log into JustGrants, you're going to need to complete the multi-factor authentication. I think more and more we're familiar with the idea that when we log into a system, we put in our username and password, and then we have to enter a code that comes to us by text or by email. That's multi-factor authentication. You will have to click Send Code on the login page in order to send the code to your phone or email or voicemail. Now, for entities that already have a JustGrants account prior to applying in grants.gov, the application submitter should be sure to use the email associated with their JustGrants account to apply for funding in grants.gov. So bearing in mind that if you've already got a JustGrants account, your username is an email address. You have to use that same email address in grants.gov to apply for funding, or it won't find you in the system. So those email addresses are the links between grants.gov and JustGrants for you. If you'll be applying for or managing awards with multiple UEIs, you will need to have a unique email address for each account. So every UEI will generate a separate JustGrants account. And if you're already managing awards under different UEIs or what used to be DUNS numbers in your organization, in JustGrants, your email address must be unique to each account. So I talked a little bit about roles earlier, so let's review those roles that play an important part in their areas. We talked a little bit about the entity administrator. Their role is to invite new users, assign the roles to those users, and then assign those users to awards and applications. Now, the entity administrator is not just a setup role. This is an ongoing role throughout the life of the award. There will always be new users onboarding. There will always be people leaving, and you'll need to offboard. And every year, you're going to have to be involved in making sure that that SAM.gov registration is activated, and you re-register every year. Now, the user roles in JustGrants allow specific access. Each new user can have one or more than one role assigned based on the type of work they'll need to do in JustGrants. So again, we talk a little bit about the entity administrator role and what the basic tasks are for that person. So in addition to managing users and keeping the entity profile information current, they also have read-only access to all the applications and awards in JustGrants. So they really have a bird's eye view of everything in your system. Now, if the entity administrator will also need to take some part in managing awards or applications, that's not a problem. They just need to be assigned the additional roles that allow them to do so. The Grant Award Administrator role is one that handles programmatic requirements, including submitting performance reports, initiating and submitting GAMs, and initiating award closeout. We also have an alternate Grant Award Administrator role available. Now, this individual can initiate but not submit grant award modifications and performance reports. So this is someone who can enter the data, but the grant award administrator is the only one that can press that submit button. The application submitter is the only role that can enter data into an application, can certify and submit it on behalf of your entity. The authorized representative is the role that may accept or decline an award on behalf of the entity. Now, this role must be assigned to someone in your organization with the legal authority to enter into a binding agreement with the Department of Justice. And this person must also be legally authorized by your organization to agree to the award terms and conditions. The financial manager submits federal financial reports on behalf of your organization. Now, regarding the application submission process, there are 3 roles that are required for this process. The user with the application submitter role is going to be the only person in JustGrants that will be able to submit an application. An application submitter profile is automatically created in JustGrants when the application is submitted in grants.gov. The person submitting the information in grants.gov is assigned to the application in JustGrants automatically. Now, if another person is going to enter application information in JustGrants, that's okay. The entity administrator will need to invite the next application submitter and then reassign the application to that person. And it's not difficult to do either of these functions. So the application submitter identifies the forms needed to submit an application, completes the web-based budget form, completes and certifies the application on behalf of your entity, and submits the application in JustGrants. If a member is assigned only the application submitter role and no other, they will not be able to see funded awards in JustGrants. Now, it's possible to assign multiple roles to that user with the application submitter role if they need them. Now, the authorized representative is the person who's authorized to enter into a legal agreement on behalf of the entity. Because the authorized representative is selected from a list of active users during the application process in JustGrants, that person must be onboarded prior to submitting the application. The entity administrator also, again, manages the users and roles in JustGrants, and it's important to know that there could only be one entity administrator in JustGrants at a time. So it's best to have a discussion about who you might designate as a backup entity administrator in case your primary entity administrator goes on vacation or on extended leave. Prior to leaving the organization for any amount of time, the entity administrator must reassign the role to another active user. Now, should the entity administrator leave suddenly without warning and is not able to reassign the role to another active user, our technical support team can help you with that, but it will require the intervention of technical support to reassign that entity administrator role. Now, I do have a couple of demonstrations on the entity administrator tasks that they do when they're onboarding a new user. And this diamond system is really very straightforward. I really like the system because it does not take very much to get things set up in Diamond. So in order to set up new users, also known as members in JustGrants, the entity administrator must invite them. Now, from the JustGrants homepage, entity administrators can open the entity users menu. And this shows all the users that have registered and logged in. They'll use that Manage Users button at the top of the screen, and that will open access to both JustGrants, but also Diamond, and only the entity administrator will have access to Diamond. Once you click the button to open the tiles, you can see all of the options that Diamond presents to the entity administrator. So in this case, we're going to invite a new member. We're going to click that button. Now, to invite a new member, all you need to do is enter the email address and confirm the email address, and then enter the first and last name. Now, you want to be sure that the entries are accurate because you will not be able to enter the email address in the future. If the email address is not accurate when submitted, you're going to have to remove the member and start all over again. And that's because the email address creates the user login name, or the username, and so it cannot be changed it just cannot be changed. You can change the first and last name if you misspell. The next thing you'll do is go down to the bottom and you select the role or roles that this person needs in order to do their work. Now, even if this person is not going to be, for instance, the grant award administrator immediately, if you think they might be in future, go ahead and assign them the role. That way, it will be very easy to assign them to a new award as a grant award administrator if needed. Now, once you select that submit button, when you're finished, it will generate that email to the new user that will be sent to the email address you entered at the top of the profile. It's another reason why that email address should be accurate, because all email notifications in JustGrants are sent to that address. So if it's incorrectly typed, then the user will never receive it. So then the next demo that I have is a demo of what the new user will receive. And they'll receive this email that's generated automatically by JustGrants. Now, it's worth noting that a lot of organizations are suspicious of system-generated emails like this one. And so a lot of organizations will automatically send an email like this to spam or junk. So if you don't receive this email generated from JustGrants in your inbox, the first thing to do would go and look in your spam or junk folders to see if you can find it. And 9 times out of 10, that is the problem with these. So now this is what the invitation email looks like. It has quite a bit of information in it. There are links. The first link that you see here is to how to log into JustGrants system. So you have the system login right there. You also have the email address and phone number of our technical support group right above it. Below we have the About JustGrants link, and that is just a link to our website that tells you a little bit more about JustGrants in general. We have a link to our training website, and that includes just a full library of training resources, job aids, reference guides, we have e-learning videos, we have all sorts of training resources, and given the time at the end of the session, I'll actually walk you through that website and show you where you can find all of the JustGrants resources you're going to need. There's a page on how to get ready, which is really good for new applicants in JustGrants, because it tells you all of the steps you're going to need to do in order to launch your account. There's a news and updates section, which I highly recommend because we have captured all of our communications that have gone out about JustGrants for the last almost 2 years now. And you can also sign up to have those emails sent to you each time we send them out. And then finally, we have a link to our frequently asked questions. So the first paragraph contains this link that says, click here and set your password using this email address within 72 hours. If you don't access this email and click here within 72 hours, your link will expire. But it's not a crisis. You'll just need to contact your entity administrator, and they can very easily resend a new link. So let's move on. So once you click that click here link, you're going to be directed to the password, the security question option. And I think we're all familiar with entering a security question in case we forget our password. So you have a list of security questions that you can select from, and you'll type in the answer, and please make sure you keep that answer somewhere handy because, you know, you really, if you do forget your password, you will need that. So I have learned not to rely on my own memory for that any longer. If you have, if you would like to be a little bit more secure, you can create both the question and the answer. So not only will a bad actor need to figure out your answer, they'll also have to figure out your question in order to access your account in JustGrants. So once you've selected or created your question and you've entered the answer, you select that Create My Account button. And then the next thing that we're going to wind up doing is create your password. So unlike our previous systems, JustGrants requires that you have your own username and your own password. And the strong recommendation is not to share these. There's no limit to the number of people that can have accounts in JustGrants. There's no reason to share accounts. So you enter your new password and repeat it. And when you select that Reset Password button, then your account is created. But we have one more step before you finish, and that is setting up your multi-factor authentication. So again, I know that we are more and more familiar with logging into a system and then having to provide an additional code in order to validate that login. This is where you can set up your favorite way of getting your validation code. So if you have a security key or a biometric authenticator, you can use the setup button for that to set that up as your multi-factor authentication. Some of you may like Google Authenticator. You're more than welcome to set that up and have that be your multi-factor authenticator. Many people like the SMS authentication that sends a text to your mobile phone number. Some people like a voice call authentication. So rather than get it by text, you get it by, you just get the code over the phone. And then finally, for those of you who may be in areas where phone service might be not as reliable as other places, you might consider email authentication, where you can access the code by email. So I'm going to just show you one of these setups. They're very straightforward. I don't think that anybody is going to need to have lengthy instructions to set up any of this, but we'll set up the SMS authentication. So the first thing to do with SMS authentication is to provide the phone number, the mobile number, of course, where you would like this code to be sent. And then you put in the phone number and click Send Code. Now that code appears almost immediately in your text. So the next screen, you'll enter that phone number again, and then you'll enter the code that appeared in your text and verify. And that's really all it takes to set up multi-factor authentication. Now, what this means, though, is that when you log into JustGrants, you're going to need to click a Send Code button every time, and it will automatically send a code where you tell it, in this case, SMS authentication. So you're going to have to do that every time you log into JustGrants. Now, once you've verified that, you do have the opportunity to set up several multi-factor authentications as you choose, so that you can select the one that you want to use in a situation. So again, if you happen to be somewhere where phone service isn't all that reachable, you might set up also an email authentication for that scenario. Now, when you click Finish, then you're done registering for JustGrants. And because we've taken a number of steps, it feels like we're just done registering for JustGrants. But really, there's one more step to take, and that is you must log into JustGrants. So if you don't receive this little tile login like this, go back to that original registration email and select the JustGrants login and use that username and password that you just set up to log into JustGrants. Once you do that, you're a fully activated JustGrants user. All right. At this point, maybe it's a good time to stop and take some questions about onboarding. I'm going to look through the chat and see if there's anything here that needs to be addressed. And perhaps Jonathan or Eric, did you find any questions that you'd like to answer verbally?
Lisa, this is John. No, I've been looking through here. We've been answering some of those. There's been some unique questions to unique entities. How to transfer from SAM.gov to grants.gov and JustGrants, and we've answered those, but I don't see, unless Eric sees something different, I don't see anything in there that we need to answer at this time. Okay,
that sounds good. I just had one pop up privately in the chat, and just so you're aware, as I'm presenting, it's very difficult for me to answer private questions in the chat. So it is much preferable if you would put your questions in the Q&A section, which you'll find in the bottom right of your WebEx window. You might need to select the three dots and pop up the Q&A feature, because I'll be much more able to get to those questions. But this one that came up privately, that is, if your agency already has a unique entity identifier for other applications, should we use the same one? And the answer to that is your agency may already have multiple UEIs. And the answer to that would be that the unique entity identifier identifies a specific organization and doing business as combination. So if your organization and doing business as combination is eligible for an application, they might be eligible for certain types of applications, but not for others. So the example that I use often is the city of Arlington, or the county of Arlington. So county of Arlington may have a unique entity identifier for their executive office, and they may have a different one for their sheriff's office. And their executive office is going to be eligible for different types of funding than their sheriff's office. So you want to make sure that you're using the correct UEI for the type of funding that you're applying for.
So Lisa, we do have a couple questions. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you're, do you want the question or?
Sure.
Were you, okay. So can you reiterate how to initially transition from the SAM.gov account to the JustGrants website to get your initial diamond authorization? And then for the entity admin, not for additional diamond authorizations. And so okay.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So when you're for the very first time applying for funds and you want to, and you submitted that application into JustGrants, the eBiz POC that you have registered in SAM.gov is going to be, after all of the applications, that application is submitted into JustGrants, that eBiz POC is automatically going to be created as the entity administrator. And they're going to be initially the only person that can access the diamond system. So before you submit your application from grants.gov, if there's a particular person that you want to be that entity administrator, the idea would be to go to sam.gov, make that person the eBiz point of contact, and then wait about 24 hours, and then submit your application in grants.gov. That will automatically create that person as the entity administrator in JustGrants. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, you may have already answered this. In case we have not set up a sam.gov account, where can we locate the UEI? Did you already answer that?
I don't think so. No, that's a good question. So if you don't have a sam.gov account, you don't have a UEI. The UEI is created when you create your sam.gov account. So prior to April 4th, there was a third party that was creating these unique identifiers. But as of April 4th, the UEI is created upon creation of the sam.gov account. That may take a couple of days, but it's part of that process.
Okay. And then once I have a UEI from SAM, am I ready to get started with grants.gov?
You absolutely are.
If our entity has expired, as well as the administrator, can we create a new SAM.gov account?
That's more of a question for SAM.gov, but if your entity is expired in SAM.gov, you can always reactivate it. And you could, once you reactivate, and actually that account has to be activated every year. So you can go ahead and reactivate that account if you want to use it. But I think regarding creating a new SAM.gov account, it might be best to run that question past SAM. I'm not sure of all of the implications of having multiple SAM.gov accounts.
Okay. How do I change to POC in SAM?
That's a good question. So what you'll do is you'll log into sam.gov, and once you log into sam.gov in your account, you'll have to scroll down, and there's a place where you see the points of contact. And there's one of the points of contact is the eBiz point of contact, and you can just get in there and update it. You just put in a new name and email address. It's pretty straightforward.
Okay. Two more. If we already have a UEI, do I need to register with SAM, or can I go directly to grants.gov?
If you already have a UEI, it sounds like you've already registered with SAM. Actually, I'm gonna actually stop for a moment on that one, because it is possible to get a UEI in SAM.gov without having a full registration in SAM.gov, and you need a full registration in SAM.gov in order to apply for funding. So I'm going to actually ask you to look at the training materials on SAM.gov. The SAM.gov is actually managed by, I believe, the Health and Human Services Agency. So they have their own, sort of support area, and they have their own, training materials. But there are two different types of registration in SAM.gov. One allows you to get funding and one does not.
Great. One more. With apologies, I've already covered, but is the entity administrator the only one who can access grants.gov to file the SF424 and the lobbying certification?
No, actually, it's not the entity administrator that does that. It would be the application submitter. So, the application submitter, the person who wants to be the application submitter in JustGrants, often is the person that will log into grants.gov and work with that, the application piece there. The entity administrator actually, if that's all they're doing, they only manage users. They don't actually have any sort of tasks in terms of submitting applications. So, good question, though.
Okay, I think we can move along.
All right, sounds good. Well, let's talk then about the application submission in grants.gov, and maybe this will proactively answer some of your upcoming questions on the application submission process. So this is a part of the grants lifecycle that involves completing and submitting some web-based forms, as well as the attachments that are requested based on the requirements in the published solicitation. Now, the process of submitting an application in JustGrants begins in grants.gov, sort of as we've already mentioned. Now, once you've located the grant option or the grant opportunity with DOJ, you're going to submit the SF424 and SF.gov. And again, this is the extent of the application requirements for grants.gov. Now, aside from those two forms, most of your application is entered in JustGrants, and your entity information is populated based on entries made in SAM.gov and also used in grants.gov. So it's a flow from SAM.gov to grants.gov to JustGrants. Now, you are going to have two application submission deadlines. There's one for grants.gov and another for JustGrants. And this is because you're actually submitting twice, once from grants.gov and once from JustGrants. Most of the application requirements, again, are going to be submitted from JustGrants. So each solicitation has an application submission deadline in grants.gov, and I believe Eric already shared these deadlines with you. After this date, the solicitation is removed from grants.gov, and no one is going to be able to apply any longer. It's highly recommended that you check the due date in grants.gov and try to submit at least 72 hours prior to the deadline to provide you with enough time to correct any errors and resubmit if necessary. So the deadline for the solicitation in grants.gov, I believe, I can't remember offhand, but I'm sure that Eric can provide that if necessary. Now, once the application has been submitted and validated in grants.gov, it'll be sent to JustGrants for completion. It's not an immediate process submitting in grants.gov and seeing it in JustGrants. It may take several days for grants.gov to complete their validations and release it to JustGrants. I have the deadline here. So the grants.gov deadline to apply for funding under the BJA FY22 Invited to Apply Byrne Discretionary Community Project program is 8:59 p.m. Eastern Time on Monday, May 23rd, 2022. And the JustGrants deadline to apply is 8:59 p.m. Eastern Time on Thursday, May 26, 2022. The JustGrants submission should include all items that are required in the solicitation, and the JustGrants application submission is final. Now, it's okay to enter preliminary information in grants.gov if you haven't fully determined your budget or project scope. You are going to be able to edit and update all your entries in JustGrants, and it's not necessary to go back to grants.gov to align all of that. So the grants.gov login is separate from JustGrants. Again, it's a separate entity. It's a separate program. Grants.gov provides access to funding opportunities for multiple government agencies and is not managed by DOJ. So you're going to have a whole different sort of set of training materials and a whole different set of technical support that's specific to grants.gov. So again, if you have questions about grants.gov, you will need to contact them for support. Now, you'll apply by selecting the option in grants.gov to apply. You'll log in using the email address that you want to use to receive notifications from grants.gov. There is a workspace icon there that will allow you then to access the funding opportunities. Now, once you've applied, you're going to receive notifications from grants.gov confirming the receipt of the SF424 and stating whether the SF424 and SFLLL were validated and submitted, or if they were rejected with errors. The notification will include an explanation for any errors. And this is why it's a good idea to submit in grants.gov at least 48 hours prior to the deadline to give you time you need to correct any errors. You will not be able to correct errors or continue with the application process once the deadline in grants.gov has passed. So the Grant Application Resource Guide from OJP provides some guidance to assist grant applicants in preparing and submitting applications for funding. It does address a variety of policies, statutes, and regulations that apply to many, or in some cases, all OJP program applicants. You can also find training on the grants.gov support page, and a link to that page is provided in that Grant Application Resource Guide. Grants.gov training includes instructions on how to register in grants.gov, the various user roles associated with that system, which are different from JustGrants roles, how to search for a federal grant, and how to begin that application process. To search for the opportunity, you want to use the Search Grants tab at the top of the page in grants.gov. Now, you can filter the search to locate grants that are specific to your needs. So you can look for this particular Byrne grant by using the opportunity status, funding instrument type, eligibility, or opportunity ID. And you want to take some time to review all of the options in each filter. And once you find the appropriate opportunity, you want to select the opportunity number that's listed there to view the requirements. Once you open that grant opportunity, you want to review the information included in the synopsis, search history, related documents, and package tabs to see if this is the right opportunity for you. And if you choose to apply, you'll select that apply button highlighted in red at the top. You will need to log in or create a grants.gov account to complete the application. Now, when you get to the SF424 in grants.gov, you'll need to know that the person whose name and email you put in section 8F on this form are going to be created in JustGrants as the application submitter. So you want to, if you already have a JustGrants login as an application submitter, you're going to need to use that same email address. Otherwise, JustGrants will not be able to will wind up creating a new login for you. So you don't need that. The application submitter is the only person who can complete the application in JustGrants, unless it's reassigned. If you want to change who the application submitter is, the entity administrator will reassign the role, but after it's been submitted in grants.gov and appears in JustGrants. Now, once you've submitted in grants.gov, you're going to receive a confirmation that your application has been received. But you also might receive notification that your application has been rejected. Just because it's been received is not the same thing as being approved. So if your application is rejected, you'll be provided with the errors that were found, and you'll be able to go back into grants.gov and make those corrections as long as it's prior to the grants.gov deadline. Now, when it comes to the SF424 and SFLLL, that's to have those documents submitted way before the deadline, which will then provide you with more time to submit, to organize your work in JustGrants. And you don't want to be up against the wall with the deadline, because if you're rejected, you may miss that deadline. So that is really kind of an overview of the grants.gov process. So I'm looking at the system, and I'm hoping that those of you who are placing your questions in the chat will copy and paste those into the Q&A feature so that we can provide answers in the Q&A feature if possible. So let's see. I think the new ones here are and I'm not sure how to answer this one. Is there anything to be concerned about if you're using a system-to-system submission? And this I'm not familiar with. I'm not sure, John or Eric, if you are familiar with that system.
This is John. I'm not actually, just Googled it. It looks like it's a system that prepares an application for you and then feeds it into, I guess, grants.gov, kind of like a TurboTax. So I'm not that familiar with it. So I'm sorry, I don't know. I mean, the nice thing about the grants.gov and the application submission process for JustGrants, and especially with the Byrne Discretionary Grant Program, this is not competitive, it's not peer reviewed. You don't need to be a professional grant writer. If you just kind of follow the steps that we laid out in this webinar, everything that we talked about here is up on the OJP website, and there are detailed tutorials that will walk you through the whole process. I think you could probably skip that intermediary, but I mean, I don't know. I don't know how it'll interact or not. I'm not quite sure. So I'm sorry. We don't have an answer for that one. Next one, can more than one person work on an application in JustGrants? For instance, can I work on the narratives while a fiscal person complete the budget?
So yeah, absolutely. However, not at the same time. So there can only be one application submitter assigned to an application at the same time. So if you work on the narrative and you complete the narrative, you can contact your entity administrator and they can reassign that application to your fiscal person who can then complete the budget. So the limitation in JustGrants is that there can only be one role, one person, one role assigned to one application at a time. With awards, you can have one grant award administrator and one financial manager, but you can't have two of any role assigned at the same time. So it's workable, but it requires the intervention of your entity administrator to make those reassignments. And it's really not hard to reassign. We just had a demo on it, and I don't think the demo took more than a minute. So it's something that we're working with right now in JustGrants.
Okay, the apply button right now is grayed out. Is that normal?
I'm assuming that's the apply button in grants.gov. Has the solicitation been published yet, or?
It's published. We posted it last Monday, the 11th.
I think I would contact grants.gov about that, to be honest.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for pointing that out. We'll follow up this webinar. We'll follow up on that. So maybe check back tomorrow, the next day, but hopefully that's not still grayed out. If it is, let us know, but we will look into that right after this. Systems. This is that system to system is something like KU's. Many universities use these. So if people have had success with those, I don't expect there would be any issues. I'm just not familiar, and I don't think Lisa's familiar with the system to system.
No, both of those systems
right.
are outside our purview.
Okay. Let's see here. Someone else mentioned grayed out on my end as well. Sorry about that, everyone. We will definitely look into that. What does this mean? To start applying for this grant opportunity, your organization must authorize you to create workspace or add you to an existing workspace.
So it sounds like that's a question on becoming a user in, for your organization's account in grants.gov. So I would maybe direct you to grants.gov for training information on that. We don't. I think that if your organization already has an account in grants.gov, they may need to do something in order to activate you as a user in grants.gov. But again, if it's outside of JustGrants, we don't really have any we don't have any influence in technical support for grants.gov. They have their own system.
So Lisa, we've had several questions where people are asking if one person can serve more than one role, right? So the initial 3 roles that you would set up, can one person fill each of those roles?
They absolutely can, and in some very small organizations, one person fulfills all of the roles, and that's all right. excuse me, JustGrants does not look at sort of any conflict of interest between those roles. So yes, and one person can have as many roles as they need in order to get the work done that they need to do.
Okay. I think that's the questions that I can see in here. And seeking more than one person work on an application to JustGrants. I think we talked about that. There was a question, why would you enter preliminary data into grants.gov and then have to re-enter this information in JustGrants system later?
You know, often when, you know, because they're working against deadlines, often, you know, an organization may not have, you know, fully determined all aspects of their project, but it's important that they get that information into grants.gov in order to get started and in order to beat the deadline. So I think the idea there is that, you know, if you have everything, you know, fully formed in grants.gov, that's absolutely wonderful, and there's less for you to do in JustGrants, but it doesn't always happen that way. I think sometimes, you know, organizations are really kind of trying to get everything determined and may not have had full approval on something, but the point of all of that is it should go into grants.gov, come into JustGrants, and if you need to make changes, you're more than welcome to make changes in JustGrants. It's you know, the process allows you to continue to adjust your project until you submit from JustGrants.
Does the grants.gov authorized rep need to match the authorized rep in JustGrants?
No, I don't believe it does. The only caveat to the authorized rep in JustGrants is that they have to be legally authorized. We highly discourage having a proxy do that for the legally authorized representative, even if that person is sort of a high-level executive or elected official, because the person that actually does accept an award on behalf of the organization must be legally authorized to agree to those terms and must be legally authorized to enter into a legal agreement. So, you know, that's the only caveat to authorized representatives in JustGrants.
How do we find the grant on JustGrants?
So that's a good question. So if you are a new organization, the grant will be in the work list of the entity administrator. If you're the application submitter, you may find it in your work list. And we're going to go into the JustGrants piece of this here shortly. I'll do a demo on how to maneuver within JustGrants.
Okay, how do we find the federal action number?
I'm not sure we capture that in JustGrants. Is that something that might be something in grants.gov? I'm not sure. I'm not.
I don't know if that's considered the CFDA number, which is in the solicitation.
Got you.
The
so
catalog of federal domestic assistance, I'm guessing. Eric can chime in if you think he has a different response to that.
No, I'm not sure what that is referring to either.
So if it is the CFDA number, it is visible in the application in JustGrants. I'll show you where you can find it. But if it's not the CFDA number, I think we're kind of stumped.
And the CFDA number is in the solicitation. It's at the first page in the solicitation that everyone should have received an email, a copy of the solicitation and the invitation email, but also a link. There was a question here. Can the entity administrator reassign or change the application submitter multiple times throughout the year? Absolutely.
There's no limit. So again, if one application submitter is going to enter the programmatic information and another enter the fiscal information, you can do that all in the same day. I mean, there's no limitation to the number of times that an application or an award can be reassigned.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There were some other questions in the Q&A that we'll have to, if we don't get to during the session, we will follow up outside of here that weren't specific to the JustGrants section. That these are more eligibility questions that we'll have to follow up with.
All right. Well, let's move forward then. If you're all ready to move forward into the JustGrants aspect of the application submission process.
Yes.
All right. At my view back here. All right, so once the application is moved from grants.gov to JustGrants, then this is where the bulk of the application work begins. Now, there are certain web-based forms that may need to be submitted directly in JustGrants. Now, for example, it's common to submit the proposal abstract by typing or pasting the information directly into a text field presented in JustGrants. You might also find that there are fields that are specific to your solicitation that need to be entered directly into JustGrants as well, as opposed to uploading a document. And this may be a change. So JustGrants is really a web-based system, and it requires you to enter a lot of information directly into JustGrants. So we'll take a look at what that looks like here in a moment when we do the demo. Now, because it's a web-based system, there are going to be some submission tips in working with the web-based system that may be different from what you've done in the past. So the application submitter role needs to be applied to any user who needs it if you already have started your onboarding in JustGrants. And please make sure if you're clicking submit from grants.gov, you only click submit one time, because clicking it more than once will submit multiple applications, and in JustGrants you'll be asked to withdraw any duplicates. Now, when you are uploading, and this is a really important point, when you're uploading any documents into JustGrants, you're going to be asked to select an attachment category. It is critical that you make a thoughtful choice when you're selecting that attachment category. For instance, if you're uploading an indirect cost agreement, you're going to be presented with a drop-down menu of attachment categories. If you don't choose indirect cost agreement, that document will be uploaded into your application, but you won't find it where you expect to see an indirect cost rate agreement. So the attachment category determines where in the application that file is going to be visible. And again, if you upload a proposal narrative, but you don't choose the proposal narrative attachment category, JustGrants isn't going to actually recognize that you did upload a proposal narrative. It'll tell you you don't have one. So the attachment categories are really, really critical. And there can be, depending on the section of the application you're in, you'll be presented with appropriate attachment categories. So for instance, when you're in the budget and you're attaching a document, the attachment categories are going to be related to the budget. But if you're in the proposal narrative section, your attachment categories are going to be related to proposal narratives. So please just pay attention to that. That's one question that we get more than almost any other in the support group. Now, you can print all the web-based entries in JustGrants by opening the Actions menu in the upper right and selecting Print. The print option will never print file attachments. You're going to have to print those separately from your workstation or your shared drive. The print option will only print the web-based entries you make in JustGrants. Now, in many text fields in JustGrants, you can copy and paste text from Microsoft Word or Excel. And this is a way to use existing content to build your application. However, you do have to be aware that sometimes your pasted text from Microsoft Word may not format in exactly the same way as it did in Word or Excel. Microsoft Word has very sophisticated formatting already embedded in Microsoft Word. JustGrants has sort of just a plain text field that does not recognize a lot of that. So if you're copying and pasting from Microsoft Word, you should always check to make sure that your text looks the way you want it to look. You can either reformat using the text editor that's provided in JustGrants, or a lot of times it's just as easy to copy from Word and then use a right click and paste without formatting. And then you get unformatted text and you can use the formatting in JustGrants to make it look the way you want to look. Now, you do want to pay attention to required sections. You must complete the application in the way that JustGrants presents it. For example, if your application contains web-based fields for your budget, JustGrants is not going to recognize and upload the attachment as your budget. You do need to use the fields that are presented in JustGrants for the purpose that they're presented. So I have a longish demo here on application submission. This is the process of submitting an application in JustGrants. It does move kind of quickly through a couple of screens, and so I think I'm going to maybe stop the demo every now and again and just talk through some of these things. So in JustGrants, you'll start in the My Work List section, and I'm logged in as an application submitter. On the home page, you see the work list. And one of the things about the work list is that it's going to present you, as the person logged in, with all of the things that you have an action to take. So if it's in your work list, it means you have to do something. You can also take a look at the applications. If you look on the left-hand side, there's a menu option to look at applications. That will show you all the applications in JustGrants, regardless of who's the application submitter. But the ones in the homepage work list, all of this is assigned to you. Now, because we're starting in the work list and we know it's assigned to you, the application, when you open it, is going to open directly into edit mode. You're not going to have to do anything to be able to edit it. So this is what the application looks like in JustGrants. And you're going to find that some of this information has already been loaded into JustGrants from grants.gov. So the funding opportunity is coming from grants.gov. There's the CFDA information, if that's what we were talking about earlier. It's right there. And the CFDA program title. And notice that that project information, which is coming again from grants.gov, comes from the SF424. All of this is editable. So again, if you had to put some information in the SF424 in order to meet the deadline, you still have the ability to come in here and update that information if you have more information and you've made better decisions on your project. Now, the fields that you see in here, we're starting on the standard applicant information section, and on the right side, you see sort of a list of sections of the application. You're going to need to go through each of these sections to make sure that you have filled in all of the required fields. Note above that menu that there's solicitation instructions. That's actually a link, and it will open the solicitation in PDF format so that you can use the solicitation instructions as guidance as you're submitting your application. So we're going to kind of take a look here at the standard applicant information. And again, all of that information is editable that you see there. So there's a continue button there on the bottom right. That will take you to the next section linearly. If you're looking at the menu in the upper right corner, you can jump around sections as you need to. You're not required to go in a straight line fashion. Now there's an areas affected by project section bottom left, and that is going to be, that's limited to 10 entries. And essentially what they're asking for there is the geographic scope of your project. Now, if it's a small project, you might put in up to 10 zip codes. If it's a larger project, you might put in up to 10 states. You can put in the name of the state, you can put in congressional districts, you name it, however you define the project, the geographic scope of your project, you can use that. You're just limited to 10 entries at the application phase. If your application is funded, which it sounds like it will be, then you can always update that information in the funded award at a later date. Right now, we're just entering zip codes, but you could, again, enter the state of Virginia. We could enter, Virginia 15 as a congressional district, whatever it is that you are looking to do. So we have the application type, comes again from SF424. It is its initial application. And notice the application submitter information cannot be edited here. In order to change the application submitter, the entity administrator has to reassign this application to somebody else. And then we have a number of other fields here that you'll fill out. So again, we can use that continue button at the bottom, or we can go back up to the top and use the menu option to move to the next page. So we'll wait for a moment to do that. The next page is confirming the authorized representative. And again, the authorized representative really has no task in terms of completing the application. However, they must be identified in the application, which means that they must be active users prior to submitting the application. So even though the authorized representative isn't going to do anything in JustGrants until the award is offered, they still have to be onboarded as users, and they have to have logged in to JustGrants in order to appear on this list of authorized users. So that's what we're going to do, is pull down this list, and these are people who have registered and logged in. Now, once you confirm that authorized representative, then that person's name will appear below. Now, this is a generic sort of application. This actually is from another managing office. You will always only see one authorized representative. Now, this is verifying the legal name and doing business as, and this information comes from sam.gov. So if you find, excuse me, that there is information here that's inaccurate, you'll have to go back to sam.gov and make those updates there. sam.gov is the keeper of all of this entity information. JustGrants communicates with sam.gov only once a day on the overnight. So if you make a change in sam.gov this afternoon, you won't see it in JustGrants till tomorrow morning. But that change then will flow through. At the bottom of this page, and you'll want to scroll to the bottom of every page, because often there is a checkbox that says I agree. And if you don't check the boxes, you won't be able to submit the application. It will drive you crazy because you'll have to go back and find those checkboxes. So always scroll to the bottom of the page. Excuse me. All right, the next section after verify legal name and address is going to be the proposal abstract. And often this is just a text box. And again, this is where you can copy and paste from a Microsoft Word document if you've already prepared this. But again, the formatting is much more sophisticated in Word than it is going to be in these text boxes. So I'm going to go back a bit so that when you paste it here, you may find that the formatting just gets a little wonky. If it's not too bad, you can use the formatting in the header here to sort of adjust things. But often, if you have a longish text to paste, you may want to, again, when you paste, do a right click with your mouse and paste without formatting, and then use the formatting options at the top of this text box in order to make it look the way you want to look. That red asterisk, by the way, indicates that a proposal abstract is required. Anything with a red asterisk in JustGrants is required. Now, here's the proposal narrative, also required, and you can upload that proposal narrative that is prepared in another, PDF, Microsoft Word, or Excel. And if you are presented with the opportunity to add new goals and objectives here, you'll click the plus new goal button here, and we'll show you that in a moment. And that will open up a number of fields that will allow you then to enter your goals and associated objectives. You can see any red asterisks here. This is all required. Once you enter a goal and the objectives and deliverables associated with that goal, you can use the add button at the bottom to add another goal with their own associated objectives and deliverables. So this is how you can add goals and objectives. So we'll continue forward. And so you can see all that. And the little trash cans there will delete a line or an entry. So now we're in the budget and associated documentation. And I'm going to move forward a little bit because this is not a normal screen for your award. But this is where you would enter personnel information, for instance. So you can enter the position title, the position description, and notice that you have these little carets here underneath for salary, fringe benefits, summary totals, and the like. So you can enter all of that information here per personnel. Oh, shoot. Let's see. All right, so we're going to go forward here, and we'll move forward here a little bit, and we'll look at the additional budget categories. They're all pretty much the same. The budget categories, they're pretty straightforward, but they do, you will be presented with these fields that you must enter in JustGrants. So again, if you have a field that requires entry where you see plus add item, You're not going to be able to upload a document with your budget. You're going to have to enter those budget figures directly into JustGrants. So you can add line items. At the bottom of each, you have additional narrative information where you should provide the detail regarding that particular budget category. So this is what those line items look like. And again, you can add as many line items per category as you need. Once you begin adding multiple line items, you'll see below that the subtotals are going to continue to increase based on the information in all of the line totals, all of the line items as you move forward. So you can delete items as well. And I'm just going to continue through this because the budget items are pretty much entered all the same way. Your budget will look different from this one because it's going to be a different project. At the end of entering the budget, you're going to have a screen called the budget summary. Now, this is kind of a nice screen because it will total up everything that you've entered in your individual categories. So if you created your budget in an Excel spreadsheet, this is a great place to compare the totals in your spreadsheet with the totals that you've entered in JustGrants. And if there are discrepancies, then you can see which category you need to go back to review. Now, this is all read-only in this screen, but if, for instance, you have a discrepancy in the travel category, then you just navigate back up the menu on the right to the travel category, find your mistake, and correct it. And while we're looking at this little menu, notice the green check marks. Those check marks do not mean that you've completed that section. Those check marks only mean that you've opened and viewed that section. So that can be a little misleading. The green check mark is not the validation that everything is correct in there. All right, so let's move forward. So then we get to the budget financial attachments, and I just want to kind of stop here a moment because there are a couple of places where you see these accordion files here, and each accordion is expecting a particular document to be uploaded. And again, I want to talk a little bit more, more about those attachment categories. When you upload a document into one of these accordion files, you see the accordion file is titled pre-agreement costs. So when you upload it, you go and find your pre-agreement costs, upload it, and then when you get to the attachment category, you're going to have to choose the category pre-agreement costs. Otherwise, it will not be located in this section. Excuse me a moment. Sorry about that, daughter walked out. So the important thing to remember is that you select the attachment category that corresponds with the document that you're uploading. And again, lots of calls to support when that doesn't happen. So to upload, you're going to attach the file by either dragging or dropping or selecting the file. And once that file is in there, then you'll see the attachment category. So then we move on to the memoranda of understanding or other supportive documents. This is an upload. And then we have, again, these are sort of, geared towards specific solicitations. This disclosure of lobbying activities is the SFLLL. And once you have submitted your application in grants.gov, the SFLLL will appear in this section automatically as a PDF file. You shouldn't have to do anything more with that. So then we have a disclosure of duplication of cost items. Again, the red asterisk, that's a yes or no question. And then we have a number of these disclosures that you'll want to read through. You want to read through all the way. And at the bottom of each of these disclosures, you will find a little checkbox that you must check indicating that you've read and you understand the disclosure. So that will be apparent at the bottom of all of these. So they must be read through in their entirety. So other disclosures and assurances allows you to upload additional documentation. And then I'd like to just kind of take a look here because here is where you'll see that little checkbox here, bottom left. It says, I agree with the above statements. And once you check it, as the application submitter, it will automatically fill in your ID and the signing date and time. So continuing on, we now have another section where you can upload documents that didn't fit neatly into any other category. And at the end, we have the certify and submit page where you can and should go through all of the sections of the application. As you open the little carrots to the left of each section of the application, you'll be able to see it in a read-only view. So you'll be able to actually read through all of your entries in the application from start to finish and just make sure that you have captured what you want to capture. Once you are happy with it, if you have changes to make, you're more than welcome to go back into the application sections to the right and make any corrections or updates that you need. But once you're happy with it, you're going to click this final review and certification of application confirmation checkbox, and that will then set you up to submit the application. So check that, and then at the bottom right, you have the opportunity to submit. Now you can come back to this application as often as you need. You just want to save it every time you leave the application. One of the frustrating things about this application is that it does not save your work from field to field. I think we're all accustomed to entering something in a field, and then when you move to the next field, that first field is saved automatically. This doesn't save field to field, it saves page to page. So if you're in the middle of a page and you click out of the application, you're going to lose whatever you hadn't saved on that page. So bear that in mind. It can be frustrating to lose, hard work in the document. Use that save button often. Now, once you've submitted your application, you're probably wondering what's next. So once the application for the solicitation has been reviewed, the entity will be notified about your funding before, like Eric said, before September 30th. Please remember who your entity administrator and authorized representative are, because they're the people that will be notified if the deadline for applications is changed for any reason. The system will also notify the application submitters. The entity administrator and authorized representative are notified when the application has been received in JustGrants from grants.gov. So you should get an email notification. And again, keep checking that spam and junk if you're not seeing it, because it may have gone there. The entity administrator will receive notification on when the award notification has been sent. Now, if you've submitted your application, the status will be submitted. You might also see a banner that indicates it's past due. This banner indicates that the submission deadline has passed, but does not mean to imply that your application is past due. If you know you've submitted it and your status is submitted, you're in good shape. So with that, are there additional questions on the application process?
Lisa, I don't see stuff specific, but I do want to follow up. I know that we had some people who had let us know that the submission button was grayed out. We've had other applicants who have said that they can submit, and I think for those that have the grayed out button, I think there might be some steps that you need to take before that button becomes available. One could be you have to hit the confirm address button. Follow up with us directly if you have those questions. The nice thing is that we have virtual question and answer sessions every week with our JustGrants team. There's actually every Wednesday from 2:30 to 4. You can register and go on there and ask these types of questions, and JustGrants team can help you individually. If you go to the ojp.gov website, click on JustGrants, and then you'll see training in there, and you click on it, and it'll give you the link to register for those virtual Q&As. We have several sessions. One, how to submit an application. That's every Wednesday at 2:30. There's ones on entity management, one they're accepting award. So that's important. In terms of any questions in the chat, if you haven't been awarded from a project more than one year, do you simply submit multiple applications with the different project names, or those are create multiple projects? So if you have an award that's been more, if you've been awarded more than one project, so if you've been listed in that JES To receive more than one, you need to submit separate applications for each project. Is there a place in the budget? Is there a place that shows the budget total for each year as well as the cumulative project total? So for this particular program, we've asked that you attach your budget. We actually have sample budgets that you can link to in the application resource guide that actually breaks it out by year and then does have a total. So that's where you'll put that information, and when you upload it, I mean, that'll be there for you. It'll be there for us to review, but we will be looking at each year, if you have multiple years, and the totals for those in your budget. So you'll have the detailed computations. You'll also have some supporting narrative to justify and explain what those costs are in your budget. Nancy, administrator and the application submitter will receive award notice, correct? Yeah, the answer is yes. I see Lisa already. So I'm still struggling to get access to the JustGrants website as we cannot locate an email sent to the entity administrator. Who do I contact at this point for assistance for that? So Lisa, the question is,
that's a good question. So once we answer all the questions we have so far, I will talk about some resources, and one of which will be to provide the link to our technical support group. They would definitely be the people that I would contact about that.
Okay, great. Where can I get a copy of the budget detail worksheet? If you look into the solicitation, there's a link to in the budget section, there'll be a link to the detail worksheet or to the application resource guide, which will provide you with the budget detail that you can fill out and include with your application. I don't see, unless Eric, I missed something, I don't see, are there other questions that we may have missed? We will get to all of these if we don't get to them in this. I don't see any other questions in the Q&A. I don't know. Look, Lisa, did you have anything more to add, or are we at the end of the?
No, actually, I do. I would like to talk a little bit about some of these training resources that we have. And if we have a couple of minutes, I would actually like to open up the training resources website because and there's a lot there. So go ahead. Okay. So in this slide deck, we've actually provided links to specific documentations from our training resources website that apply to the contents we've covered today. So the JustGrants website is our primary resource website for all questions, JustGrants and related systems. We also have an entity user experience training and an application submission training and reference materials page, and I'll show you where those are. And then for a deeper dive into the different user roles, we have a user roles guide here. And again, those links are here in this slide deck. So now if you are going to be contacting our technical support group, you'll use the bottom links here, the justgrants.support@usdoj.gov. If you send an email to that email address, it will automatically open a ticket for you, and someone will get back to you about your issue. Be sure if you contact our support that you keep that ticket number. That is how we find all information to help follow up with an issue. You can also call them at 833-872-5175, and they're available Monday through Friday between the hours of 5 a.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern Time, Saturday, Sunday, and federal holidays from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. So now I'd like to actually take you through our justgrants.usdoj.gov website, and this is where I'll show you all of our training information. I just need to stop sharing PowerPoint and start sharing Google here. Let me see. All right, so let me go ahead and share this one. So this is the website, justgrants.usdoj.gov. I'm going to take just a couple of minutes to show you some key elements of it. The first of which is that when you log in here, you automatically have access to your JustGrants login. You can log directly into JustGrants from here. This first page provides quick links to all sorts of information here. So you can either use these quick links on the main page, or you can use these links across the top, whatever you like. Here's our training information here on our training page. We offer all sorts of information. I'm going to look at the application submission information right now because that's what we're talking about today. And on the training application submission page, we have an overview of the application process. We have a DOJ application submission checklist. We have a job aid reference guide, which is actually a long, detailed document that covers all sorts of aspects of the application submission in JustGrants. Submitting an application, budget attachments, the whole thing. And we talk about overview information in these. We talk about JustGrants. We talk about deadlines and application submitters, and then we get to the step-by-step information. So all of the demo that I did for you today with the application, all of those steps are captured here in screenshots and steps, and the steps are indicated on the screenshot where you can look to make these things happen. We also provide notes that will help you as well. If you are more of a video person, we have a lot of videos. So for instance, we have a video on getting ready to apply, and this is confirming your entity's system for award management, or SAM, registration information. So we have video information here, how to apply in grants.gov, and we offer not just the videos, but also additional reference information here. So this is just a very rich website for application submissions. So I want to just bring you to that particular page because that will be the most helpful for now. And then, as John mentioned, we do these virtual Q&A sessions for all applicants and grantees. The virtual Q&A sessions you can find here under training, virtual Q&A sessions. And we offer post-award management. So once you have a funded award, we talk about how to submit performance reports, federal financial reports, grant award modifications, and closeout. And that is geared towards grant award administrators, entity administrators, and financial managers. And you can see we have a number of upcoming sessions. We do this one every Monday from 1 to 2:30 Eastern Time. On Tuesdays, for entity administrators, we have a session just for user management and making sure that your JustGrants account is online and successfully onboarded, again, every Tuesday from 2 to 3 Eastern Time. And as John mentioned, on Wednesdays, we do a full application training just like this one, but not specific to a particular award. For entity administrators, application submitters, authorized representatives, and we walk through essentially all of the information we walk through today. And again, here's that link there. And then finally, when you're ready to accept your award, your authorized representative and entity administrator may be interested in attending on Thursdays from 2 to 3 Eastern Time. I have links there. Also, we have prior virtual session content. So if you want to, for instance, on post-award, take a look at the presentation or recording from a previous session, you can do that, and then we link all of these training materials here. So there's just a lot going on. I haven't even talked about the resources, the ASAP resources, grants.gov, SAM.gov. We have a library, a video library, an FAQ library. And finally, here on our news and updates, we do encourage you to sign up for our email updates. We only send them out every so often. We just really don't inundate your inbox with those. So would like to invite you to sign up for that. And then with that, again, here we have our upcoming sessions again here in the slide deck. And then I have one last, I guess we have one more minute for questions, if there are any burning questions that we can answer in the Q&A.
Yeah, Lisa, this is John, thanks. Hey, I just want to clarify something. I misspoke. In terms of the budgets, you don't attach it. You actually complete the web-based form in JustGrants for your budget. It's actually pretty user-friendly, and so that's what, I know there was some confusion in the chat, so I apologize. I don't see any questions in here. If we didn't get your question, we're going to go back through these Q&As, and we'll respond back to you after this webinar. But I just really I want to thank Eric and Lisa for providing us with the solicitation and application process overview, and I especially want to thank all of you who joined us today. It was 2 hours. I know it was a long time. There was a lot of information, but hopefully you've now got an understanding of what it is that you need to do in order to apply, submit your application. We have a lot of resources up there that Lisa had mentioned, we at the Office of Justice Programs, we really look forward to working with you on your Byrne Discretionary project. So please don't hesitate to reach out to your funding agency point of contact. If you have any questions, go online, go onto our virtual Q&As. We're here to assist you. Just anytime, just reach out. And I don't know if we have anything else. Like I said, we'll be following up with a link to the recorded webinar. We'll also provide you guys with a copy of the slide deck. And then again, we're here to assist. Just reach out to us. Lisa, is there anything else, or Eric, do you have anything to add before we close this out?
No, I didn't. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you all for coming today, and we do want to emphasize that it's a good idea to begin the application process this week if possible. It is a 45-day application period, and please, again, be sure you have an active account in sam.gov and you complete the grants.gov requirements in advance of a deadline to allow for time to correct any possible errors. And please reach out to your program office contacts with any questions you might have. I know John and Eric are very responsive, and again, as they mentioned, we'll, if there are unanswered questions from today's session, those responses will be provided in the near future. So thank you again and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.